Admiral Taylor stood on the bridge of his massive command ship, watching the endless void of space through the main viewing port. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease, checking the daily reports from his fleet. The Dominion's Edge was the largest ship in Sector 7 Alpha, stretching nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern. Around it, 47 other Imperial vessels maintained formation, their hulls gleaming with the dark metal that marked them as property of the Galactic Empire. The day had started like any other patrol duty. Check the border systems, scan for illegal mining operations, and ensure that no unknown species tried to enter Imperial space without proper authorization. Taylor had been doing this job for 12 standard years, and nothing ever happened in this quiet corner of the galaxy. That changed when Sub-Commander Thylak's voice cut through the bridge's normal hum of activity. "Admiral, we have an unknown. Contact approaching our position," the insectoid officer reported, her compound eyes reflecting the green glow of her sensor display. "The reading is very strange, sir." Taylor moved to the sensor station, his heavy boots clicking against the metal deck plates. "Define strange, Sub-Commander." Thylak's mandibles clicked nervously. "The object appears to be small, roughly the size of a standard fighter craft. But the energy signature suggests something much larger. Our computers cannot identify the power source." "Show me," Taylor ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a tactical view of local space. A small red dot moved toward their position at a speed that made Taylor's eyes widen. According to the display, the unknown vessel was traveling at nearly 30% of light speed without any visible means of propulsion. "That is impossible," Taylor muttered. "No ship that small should be able to achieve those velocities." "And where are the engine signatures?" "Unknown, sir," Thylak replied. "Our scanners detect no conventional drive system. No plasma trails, no gravitational distortion, no exotic particle emissions. The vessel appears to be moving through space as if the laws of physics do not apply to it." The bridge crew had stopped, their normal duties to stare at the display. Conversations died as everyone focused on the approaching contact. Taylor felt a chill run down his spine. In his 12 years of service, he had encountered 17 different species and dozens of ship designs. None of them had technology like this. "Time to intercept?" he asked. 4 minutes at current velocity, sir." "Signal the fleet. All ships to combat readiness. Launch fighter squadrons and establish defensive formation Delta 7. Around the Dominion's Edge, the Imperial fleet sprang into action. Smaller vessels moved into protective positions while the larger ships powered up their weapon systems. Fighter craft poured from launch bays like angry insects, forming screening formations around the capital ships. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." "Put it through," Taylor ordered. The speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking in perfect galactic standard. But the accent was unlike anything Taylor had ever heard. "Good morning, folks. This is Captain Rick Martinez of the Earth vessel Defiant Spirit. We detected your fleet and thought we should say hello. Hope we are not interrupting anything important." The bridge fell silent. Taylor stared at the communication panel as if it had just spoken heresy. Earth? He had never heard of any species calling their homeworld by that name. And the casual tone of the transmission was completely wrong. When unknown vessels encountered Imperial fleets, they usually responded with fear, aggression, or formal diplomatic protocols. They did not sound like they were greeting neighbors at a social gathering. "Unknown vessel," Taylor replied, using the standard first contact script. "You have entered Imperial space without authorization. Identify yourself and state your intentions, or you will be considered hostile." The response came back immediately, and Taylor could swear he heard laughter in the background. "Imperial space? Sorry about that, Admiral. We did not realize anyone had claimed this area. According to our charts, this region is listed as unclaimed territory. Maybe there was a paperwork mix-up somewhere. We are just passing through on a routine patrol." Thylak looked up from her sensors, confusion written across her features. "Sir, the vessel has stopped directly in front of our formation. Distance, 5,000 kilometers. It shows no signs of defensive posturing. Zektar looked at the tactical display again. The small red dot sat motionless in space, apparently unconcerned by the 48 warships surrounding it. Either the pilot was insane, or he had good reason to be confident. "Captain Martinez," Zektar said carefully, "you are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and prepare to be boarded for inspection." "Outgunned?" The human voice sounded genuinely puzzled. "Oh, I think there might be some confusion here, Admiral. This is just a patrol boat. We are not looking for trouble, but we do not exactly surrender to anyone. How about we just talk this through like civilized beings?" A patrol boat? Zektar studied the energy readings again. The small vessel was generating more power than some of his cruisers. If this was truly just a patrol craft, what did their actual warships look like? "Sir," Thylak whispered, "I am detecting additional contacts approaching from multiple vectors. 3 more vessels, similar size and configuration to the first." The tactical display updated, showing 4 small dots now surrounding the Imperial fleet. Somehow 3 more human ships had appeared without triggering any of their long-range sensors. They had simply materialized at the edge of scanner range as if they had been there all along. "Captain Martinez," Zektar said, his voice tight with growing concern, "how many vessels do you have in this area?" "Just a few, Admiral. We like to travel in small groups for safety. You know how dangerous space can be." "Dangerous space?" Zektar commanded the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy. What could possibly threaten these humans that they needed to travel in armed groups? Before he could respond, his communication officer spoke up. "Sir, we are receiving additional transmissions from the other human vessels. They are requesting permission to dock and exchange cultural information." "They want to dock?" Zektar could not hide his disbelief. "With an Imperial fleet?" "That is correct, sir. They say it is standard protocol for first contact situations." Zektar looked around his bridge at the confused faces of his crew. In 12 years of service, no one had ever asked to dock with his ships. Most species tried to flee when they encountered Imperial fleets. Others prepared for battle. None of them treated meeting the Galactic Empire like a social event. "Sub-Commander Thylak," he said slowly, "what exactly are we dealing with here?" Thylak's compound eyes studied her sensor displays for several long moments before she answered. "I do not know, sir, but I do not think these humans are what they appear to be." Science Officer Quintel materialized on the bridge of the Dominion's edge in a shimmer of blue light, his ethereal form barely solid enough to interact with the ship's controls. As the fleet's chief scientist, he had been studying the sensor, data from his laboratory for the past hour, and what he found made no sense at all. "Admiral," Quintel said, his voice carrying the musical tone typical of his species, "I have completed my analysis of the human vessels. The results are deeply troubling." Zektar turned from the main display where he had been watching the 4 human ships. They hung in space like sleeping predators, making no aggressive moves but somehow managing to look dangerous anyway. "Explain." "The energy signatures indicate fusion reactors, but not any design in our databases. The power output suggests they are using controlled stellar fusion, containing the equivalent of a small star inside each vessel." Quintel's form flickered with agitation. "Admiral, that technology should not be possible for a species we have never encountered." "Perhaps they stole it from another civilization," Zektar suggested. "That is what I thought initially. But I have been monitoring their communications. They speak of their reactors as if they are primitive technology. One of their engineers mentioned they are hoping to upgrade to something called antimatter drives soon." Sub-Commander Thylak looked up from her station. "Sir, I am detecting another transmission from the human vessels. They are requesting permission to demonstrate their docking procedures." "Demonstrate?" Zektar repeated. The communication channel opened, and Captain Martinez's voice filled the bridge. "Admiral, we realize our ships might look a bit different from what you are used to. We thought it might help if we showed you how our docking systems work. Dr. Rodriguez here has been looking forward to meeting your science team." A new voice joined the transmission, female and enthusiastic. "Hello there, I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Chief Engineer on the Defiant Spirit. We've been studying your ship designs through our scanners, and they're fascinating. We'd love to share some technical data if you're interested. Quintel's ethereal form went rigid. Admiral, no species should be able to scan our ships through. Our shields, our defensive systems are specifically designed to prevent such intrusion. Dr. Rodriguez, Zektar said carefully. Our vessels are protected by military-grade defensive screens. How are you scanning our ships? Oh, those energy barriers? They're really well designed. We had to adjust our sensors to compensate for the interference patterns. Took us about 20 minutes to figure out the harmonic frequencies. Your engineers did excellent work with the power distribution systems. 20 minutes. Zektar felt his blood chill. It had taken Imperial scientists 3 years to develop those shield systems, and the humans had analyzed them in 20 minutes. Sir, the tactical officer called out, one of the human vessels is moving. It appears to be approaching our starboard docking bay. On the main screen, one of the small human ships glided toward the Dominion's edge with impossible grace. As it drew closer, Zektar could see that it was not just small, it was tiny. The entire vessel could have fit inside one of his fighter bays with room to spare. How many crew members are aboard that ship? He asked. Just me, came the cheerful reply from a new voice. Lieutenant Jake Thompson, Earth Defense Force. Don't worry about fighter escorts, Admiral. This little boat can take care of itself. Fighter escorts? Zektar watched as the human vessel performed a series of maneuvers. That should have been impossible. It spun end over end while maintaining forward momentum, then suddenly accelerated to a speed that would have turned any living being into paste against the bulkheads. The acceleration forces, Quintel whispered in horror. No organic being could survive those maneuvers. Jake, Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut in. Show off later, we have guests to meet. Sorry, Doc, just having some fun with the local physics. Local physics? What did that even mean? The human vessel approached the docking bay and somehow attached itself to the Imperial ship, without using any visible docking clamps or magnetic systems. It simply touched the hull and stuck there as if it belonged. Docking complete, Jake announced. Equalizing pressure now. You folks breathe oxygen-nitrogen mix, right? Great, that makes things easy. Zektar stared at the docking display. According to the sensors, the human ship had somehow integrated itself with his vessel's life support systems. That should have been impossible without hours of technical preparation and multiple safety checks. Admiral, Thylak said, her voice tight with concern, I am detecting massive power fluctuations from the human vessel. The energy output is increasing, beyond safe parameters. Jake? Elena's voice carried a note of mild annoyance. Are you running the reactor at full power again? Just warming up the engines, Doc. This ship has been in standby mode for 3 hours. The antimatter containment system gets cranky if I don't cycle it regularly. Antimatter containment system. On a single-person patrol craft. Quintel's ethereal form began to flicker rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Dr. Rodriguez, Zektar said, trying to keep his voice steady. You mentioned antimatter. That is theoretical technology. No known species has successfully weaponized antimatter. Weaponized? Elena sounded confused. Oh, we're not using it as a weapon. This is just the power source for Jake's ship. We've been using antimatter reactors. For about 60 years now, they're much cleaner than the old fusion drives. 60 years. The Galactic Empire's most advanced theoretical physicists believed antimatter power was at least a century away from practical application. These humans were talking about it like it was old technology. If I may ask, Quintel interjected, what do you consider to be advanced technology?
Well, Elena said thoughtfully, we've been working on some really interesting projects lately. Dimensional fold drives, temporal stabilizers, reality anchors for when we need to work in unstable space-time regions. The quantum engineering department
has been having a lot of fun with pocket universe construction. The bridge fell silent. Zektar looked around at his crew, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. These humans were casually discussing technologies that existed only in the most theoretical scientific papers, and they spoke about manipulating space-time itself as if it were a hobby project. Reality anchors? Quintel asked weakly. Oh yes, very important safety equipment. You never know when you might encounter a region where the laws of physics are unstable. We learned that lesson the hard way during the Vega incident. Lost 3 ships before we figured out how to stabilize local reality. They had lost ships to unstable physics. What kind of universe did these humans live in where such dangers were routine concerns? Sir, the communications officer reported, we are receiving additional signals. Long-range sensors detect 17 more human vessels approaching our position. 17 more ships. Zektar watched the tactical display as new contacts appeared at the edge of sensor range. But these were not small patrol craft like the first 4. These were larger, much larger, and they were approaching at speeds that made the original human vessels look slow. Sorry about the reinforcements, Captain Martinez said, his tone apologetic. Standard protocol requires backup when we encounter unknown military formations. Don't worry, they're just here for observation. Just for observation. 17 ships that appeared to be the size of Imperial dreadnoughts, arriving to observe a first contact situation. Captain Martinez, Zektar said, his voice barely steady. How large is your fleet? Our fleet. Oh, this isn't our fleet, Admiral. This is just the local patrol group. The actual fleet is back home, probably having lunch right about now. Zektar closed his eyes and tried to process what he was hearing. If this was just a patrol group, with vessels that outclassed anything in Imperial space, what did the human military actually look like? Dr. Rodriguez, Quintel said, his ethereal voice trembling. May I ask what your species considers to be a warship? Elena's laugh carried a note of embarrassment. Oh, we try not to build actual warships anymore. Too dangerous. The last time we built a proper military vessel, it accidentally cracked a moon during weapons testing. These days we focus on exploration and defense systems. They had cracked a moon. During testing. By accident. Zektar opened his eyes and looked at the tactical display showing 21 human vessels surrounding his fleet. 21 ships that their pilots considered to be basically harmless exploration craft. For the first time in his 12-year career, Admiral Zektar Nul began to wonder if the Galactic Empire had made a terrible mistake. War Marshal Kolveth received the emergency transmission while reviewing battle plans in his private quarters aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Conquest. The massive Draconian stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide bearing the scars of countless battles across the galaxy. He had commanded Imperial forces for over 30 years and had never encountered a situation that required his personal attention at the Outer Rim territories. Until now. War Marshal Admiral Zektar's voice crackled through the communication system. We have a situation that requires immediate strategic consultation. We have encountered a species that possesses technology far beyond our current understanding. Kolveth's yellow eyes narrowed. Explain the nature of this technology, Admiral. Sir, they appear to use controlled antimatter as a routine power source. Their smallest vessels generate energy levels equivalent to our battle cruisers, and there are now 43 of their ships surrounding my fleet. 43 ships. Kolveth had been expecting reports of smugglers or territorial disputes, not a potential first contact scenario with an advanced civilization. Are they hostile? Unknown, sir. They claim to be conducting routine patrols and seem friendly. But War Marshal, I believe we may have encountered a Type 2 civilization. The communication went silent for several seconds. A Type 2 civilization meant a species capable of harnessing the energy output of entire star systems. The Galactic Empire was barely Type 1, having only recently achieved the ability to use the full resources of individual planets. I am dispatching the 3rd Battle Fleet to your position, Kolveth decided. Maintain peaceful contact but do not reveal any military secrets. Sir, I do not think military secrets will be an issue. They seem to know more about our technology than we do. Before Kolveth could respond, a new voice joined the transmission channel. Female, confident, and speaking with the same strange accent he had heard from the other human communications. War Marshal Kolveth, this is General Kate Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We have been monitoring your communications and would like to request a formal meeting. We understand you are the supreme military commander for this region of space. Kolveth felt his blood pressure spike. They had been monitoring Imperial military channels through encrypted communication systems that should have been impossible to break. How are you accessing our communications? Your encryption is quite sophisticated, Kate replied with what sounded like genuine admiration. It took our computers almost 3 full seconds to decode the patterns. We apologize for the intrusion, but we wanted to make sure we were speaking with the proper authority. 3 seconds. Imperial encryption specialists had spent decades developing those codes, and the humans had broken them in 3 seconds. General Morrison, Kolveth said carefully, what are your intentions in Imperial space? Actually, that is part of what we need to discuss. According to our star charts, this region is listed as unclaimed territory. We have been conducting routine patrols here for the past 40 years. 40 years. The Empire had only established formal control over this sector 15 years ago. That meant the humans had been here first, watching Imperial expansion into what they considered their territory. Sir, Admiral Zektar's voice interrupted. We have a new contact approaching. Much larger than the previous vessels. Kolveth's tactical display updated automatically, showing the sensor feed from Zektar's fleet. A massive object was approaching at impossible speed, easily 10 times the size of the Dominion's edge. As it drew closer, the scanners revealed a ship that defied every principle of military engineering Kolveth had ever learned. The human dreadnought Iron Thunder looked more like a mobile space station than a warship. Its hull stretched over 20 kilometers from end to end, bristling, with structures that the Imperial computers could not identify. Energy readings suggested power generation capabilities that exceeded the combined output of Kolveth's entire battle fleet. Greetings, Imperial forces, a new voice announced. This is Commander Alex Chen aboard the Iron Thunder. General Morrison asked me to provide transportation for the diplomatic meeting. I hope our arrival has not caused any alarm. Alarm was putting it mildly. Kolveth stared at the sensor readings, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. The human vessel was not just large, it was impossibly complex. Thousands of smaller craft moved around its hull like insects around a hive, each one comparable in size to Imperial fighters, but reading as having their own independent power sources. Commander Chen, Kolveth managed. That is quite an impressive vessel. Oh, this old thing? Alex sounded embarrassed. The Iron Thunder is actually scheduled for decommission next year. She is getting a bit outdated compared to our newer designs, but she still runs pretty well for diplomatic missions. Outdated. The most powerful ship Kolveth had ever seen was considered outdated by human standards. If I may ask, Admiral Zektar interjected, what does your current military technology look like? Well, Alex said thoughtfully, our newest ships are about 30% more efficient than the Iron Thunder. Better quantum shielding, improved reality stabilizers, and the new antimatter reactors can maintain power output even during dimensional transitions. Plus, the AI systems are much more user-friendly. AI systems, dimensional transitions, quantum shielding. Every term Alex mentioned casually was beyond Imperial understanding. Commander Chen, General Morrison's voice returned. Why don't you give our new friends a brief tour of the Iron Thunder? I think it might help with the diplomatic process. Excellent idea, General. Imperial forces, we would be honored to host a delegation aboard our ship. We can demonstrate some of our basic defensive systems and maybe share some cultural information. Basic defensive systems. Kolveth realized he was about to get a first-hand look at technology that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. 2 hours later, Kolveth found himself in a shuttle approaching the human dreadnought, accompanied by Admiral Zektar and Science Officer Quintel. As they drew closer to the Iron Thunder, the true scale of the vessel became apparent. What had looked like surface details from a distance were actually massive structures, each one larger than Imperial cruisers. Welcome aboard, Commander Chen greeted them in the shuttle bay. The human was smaller than Kolveth had expected, appearing almost fragile compared to the massive Draconian. But his eyes held a confidence that suggested he was completely comfortable commanding a ship capable of destroying star systems. Thank you for the invitation, Kolveth replied. We are curious about your technology. Happy to show you around. Let's start with the basic systems. Alex led them through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls hummed with energy that made Kolveth's scales tingle. This section houses our primary antimatter storage. We keep about 6 months of fuel in reserve, just in case we run into supply problems during long-range missions. 6 months of antimatter fuel. Enough energy to power the entire Imperial fleet for decades, stored casually as emergency supplies. They passed through engineering sections where humans worked alongside machines that seemed to repair themselves. Alex explained that the ship's AI handled most routine maintenance, leaving the crew free to focus on exploration and research. Research? Quintel asked, his ethereal form flickering with interest. Oh yes, we are always working on new projects. Right now we are testing a new type of shield that can protect against temporal attacks. And the weapons department has been experimenting with contained black hole ammunition. Contained black hole ammunition. Weapons that used the gravitational force of collapsed stars as projectiles. Commander, Kolveth said, his voice barely steady. What do you consider to be your most powerful weapons? Alex looked uncomfortable. Well, we try not to think in terms of weapons anymore. After the incident with the Centauri system, we focus more on defensive technology. What happened at Centauri? Admiral Zektar asked. We accidentally destroyed the entire system during a weapons test about 50 years ago. Turns out our new reality warping torpedo was a bit more powerful than we calculated. 5 inhabited planets and over 3 billion people just gone. That was when we decided that maybe we were getting a little too good at building things that kill. 3 billion people. An entire star system. Destroyed by accident during testing. Alex continued the tour, showing them shield generators that could protect against attacks from alternate dimensions, engines that move ships through folded space-time, and medical bays that could apparently bring people back from the dead. The really impressive stuff is back on Earth, Alex mentioned casually as they concluded the tour. This ship is just a frontier patrol vessel. The real fleet protects the core systems. How large is the real fleet? Kolveth asked, dreading the answer. Oh, about 30,000 ships, give or take a few hundred. But most of them are much bigger than the Iron Thunder. We learned a lot about ship design after the Centauri incident. 30,000 ships, each one larger and more powerful than the vessel that already outclassed the entire Imperial military. As Kolveth's shuttle returned to the Dominion's edge, he stared back at the Iron Thunder and tried to process what he had learned. Supreme Chancellor Velthar had ruled the Galactic Empire for over 2 centuries. The ancient crystalline being stood 4 meters tall in the center of the Imperial Senate chamber, his translucent body reflecting the light from 1,000 worlds that paid tribute to his authority. He had overseen the conquest of 47 star systems and the integration of 23 different species into the Empire. Nothing in his long experience had prepared him for the report he was receiving. You are telling me, Velthar said, his voice resonating through the crystal formations that made up his throat, that we have encountered a species that treats antimatter as basic fuel and considers star system-destroying weapons to be safety mistakes. War Marshal Kolveth nodded grimly from his position at the reporting podium. Around the circular chamber, representatives from every member species of the Empire listened in growing horror as he detailed the encounter with the humans. That is correct, Supreme Chancellor. Furthermore, they have revealed that they have been operating in what we considered Imperial territory for 40 years. They were here before we claimed the region. How many of their vessels have been identified? Asked Senator Morthak, a slug-like being whose species specialized in military intelligence. We have confirmed visual contact with 68 ships. However, their diplomatic representative has suggested that this represents only a small fraction of their local patrol forces. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs from dozens of different species. Velthar raised one crystalline hand, and silence returned immediately. And their intentions? The Chancellor asked. Unknown. They have requested formal diplomatic contact. A representative calling herself Ambassador Helen Carter is requesting permission to establish what she terms proper first contact protocols. Before Velthar could respond, the chamber's communication system activated with a soft chime. The voice that emerged spoke in perfect galactic standard, but with the now familiar human accent that had become the source of so much concern. Supreme Chancellor Velthar, this is Ambassador Helen Carter, of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I apologize for the interruption, but we have been monitoring your session and felt it would be more efficient to address your concerns directly. The chamber fell into absolute silence. The Imperial Senate was protected by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. No outside force should have been able to penetrate their communication networks, let alone monitor their private deliberations. How are you accessing our communications? Velthar demanded. Your security systems are quite impressive, Helen replied with what sounded like genuine respect. Our technical team spent almost 10 minutes analyzing your encryption before we found a way through. We want to assure you that we have no hostile intentions. We simply believe that proper diplomatic protocols require full transparency. 10 minutes. The security systems protecting the Imperial Senate had cost more resources than some species possessed in their entire economies. The humans had treated them like a minor inconvenience. Ambassador Carter, Velthar said carefully, what are your terms for establishing diplomatic relations? Actually, that is part of the issue we need to discuss. According to our records, this is our 847th first contact with a galactic civilization. We have standard procedures for these situations. 847. The Galactic Empire was aware of only 36 intelligent species in the known galaxy. The humans had apparently been conducting diplomatic missions across the entire galactic region, while the Empire remained ignorant of their existence. You have contacted 800 other species? Senator Morthak asked, his voice tight with disbelief. Oh yes, establishing peaceful relations is very important to us. We have learned that most civilizations develop much better when they are not worried about external threats. We try to provide protection and guidance to younger species until they are ready to handle galactic politics on their own. Protection and guidance. The humans spoke as if they were the guardians of galactic civilization, protecting lesser species from dangers they could not handle alone. What kind of threats require such protection? Velthar asked. Well, there are the usual problems. Aggressive expansion by militaristic species, resource conflicts, technological disasters. And then there are the more serious concerns from outside the galaxy. Outside the galaxy. Velthar felt a chill run through his crystalline structure. What exists outside our galaxy? Oh, quite a lot, actually. Other galaxies have their own civilizations, and not all of them are friendly. We have been dealing with extragalactic threats for several thousand years now. It is one of the reasons we monitor local galactic development so closely. Several thousand years. The humans had been fighting threats from other galaxies for longer than most Imperial species had possessed spaceflight technology. A new voice joined the communication channel, male and carrying a tone of polite authority. Supreme Chancellor, this is Captain Nick Johnson of Terran Intelligence. I think it would be helpful if we addressed some of the concerns that have been raised during your deliberations. Terran Intelligence. The humans had been monitoring the entire Senate session, analyzing Imperial concerns and preparing responses in real time. Captain Johnson, Velthar said, you have been listening to classified Imperial discussions. Yes, sir, and we apologize for the intrusion. However, we felt it was important to clarify some misconceptions that seem to be developing. For example, several of your senators have suggested that we might be planning an invasion of Imperial territory. Senator Morthak shifted uncomfortably in his biosuit. That had indeed been one of the primary concerns raised during the private discussions. The truth is, Nick continued, we have been protecting Imperial territory from external threats for the past 15 years. There have been 3 separate invasion attempts by species from neighboring galaxies. Your military forces never detected these incursions because we intercepted and dealt with the threats before they could reach Imperial space. 3 invasion attempts from other galaxies. The most advanced sensors in the Imperial fleet had detected nothing, while the humans had apparently been fighting galactic wars to protect territory the Empire claimed as their own. Why would you protect us without revealing yourselves? Velthar asked. Standard protocol, Helen's voice returned. We prefer to allow civilizations to develop naturally without interference. However, we do not allow external forces to destroy or enslave developing species. When the Andromeda Collective attempted to establish mining operations in your territory, we convinced them to redirect their efforts elsewhere. The Andromeda Collective, a species from an entirely different galaxy that the Empire had never known, existed. How did you convince them? War Marshal Kolveth asked from his position in the chamber. Diplomatic pressure mostly, Nick replied. We demonstrated some of our defensive capabilities and explained that this region of space was under Terran protection. They decided to look for resources elsewhere. Demonstrated defensive capabilities. The humans had fought off an extragalactic invasion force to protect the Empire, and the Imperial military had never even known the threat existed. Captain Johnson, Velthar said slowly, what would have happened if we had detected these invasion attempts ourselves? Honestly, your current military technology would not have been effective against Andromedan forces. Their ships use quantum, armor, and reality distortion weapons. Your conventional weapons would have been largely useless. Reality distortion weapons. The humans spoke casually about military technologies that sounded like science fiction to the most advanced Imperial scientists. A new sound emerged from the communication system, a soft beeping that suggested an incoming priority message. Nick's voice returned with a note of concern. Supreme Chancellor, I am afraid we are going to need to cut this conversation short. We are detecting another extragalactic incursion attempt in the Vega sector. 3 collective scout ships have just entered this galaxy. We will handle this, Helen said briskly. Ambassador Carter, to all Terran vessels, implement Defense Protocol 7. I want those scouts intercepted before they can establish communication with their home galaxy. Acknowledged, Ambassador, came multiple responses from human vessels that the Imperial sensors still could not properly detect. Supreme Chancellor, Helen continued, we will resume diplomatic discussions once we have dealt with this situation. Please consider our offer of formal protective status for Imperial territory. We believe it would be mutually beneficial. Communication channel closed, leaving the Senate chamber in stunned silence. Velthar looked around at the faces of his senators, seeing his own shock reflected in dozens of different alien features. The Galactic Empire, the most powerful force he had ever known, had just been offered protection by a species that treated interstellar warfare as routine maintenance. War Marshal, he said finally, what is your military assessment of our situation? Kolveth's scarred face was grim. Supreme Chancellor, I believe we have 3 options. We can accept human protection and become their junior partners. We can attempt to maintain independence and hope they continue protecting us anyway. Or we can resist their influence and face extragalactic threats alone with technology they consider inadequate. Overlord Raktor had commanded Imperial military forces for longer than most species had possessed written language. The massive reptilian being stood 6 meters tall, his armored hide bearing the marks of battles across 3 galactic spirals. He had personally led the conquest of the Outer Rim territories, and had never encountered an enemy that could not be defeated through superior firepower and tactical planning. That confidence died the moment Admiral Taylor arrived with the human battle fleet. Standing on the observation deck of his command dreadnought Eternal Dominion, Raktor watched through reinforced viewing ports as space itself seemed to tear open in a series of brilliant flashes. What emerged from those dimensional rifts defied every principle of military engineering he had ever learned. 17 human warships materialized in perfect formation, each one larger than anything in the Imperial arsenal. But size was not what made Raktor's blood run cold. It was the casual way these vessels manipulated reality itself, appearing from folded space as if dimensional travel was as simple as opening a door. Overlord, his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled panic. The energy readings from the human fleet exceed the combined output of our entire military by a factor of 30. 30 times more powerful than every Imperial warship combined. Raktor had fought against civilizations that possessed superior technology before, but never anything on this scale. Imperial forces, a calm female voice, emerged from the communication system. This is Admiral Beth Taylor of the Terra Defense Fleet Alpha Division. We apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we needed to respond quickly to the extragalactic threat. The situation has been resolved. The situation had been resolved. In the time it had taken Raktor to receive reports about the mysterious collective, scouts the humans had already located and dealt with the threat. Admiral Taylor, Raktor replied, his voice carefully controlled. We were not aware that extragalactic forces posed an immediate danger to this region. The Andromeda Collective has been probing this galaxy for about 50 years now, Beth explained matter-of-factly. They send scout ships every few months to test our response times and defensive capabilities. This was the largest group they have sent recently, but nothing we could not handle. 50 years. The humans had been fighting an ongoing conflict with an extragalactic civilization for half a century, and the Empire had never detected even the slightest evidence of these battles. How many collective ships were involved in this incursion? Raktor asked. 3 heavy scouts and a command vessel. We intercepted them about 2 light-years from Imperial space. Captain Mitchell's Special Forces team disabled their ships and convinced them to return to Andromeda. No shots were fired. No shots were fired. The humans had defeated an extragalactic invasion force without using weapons. Before Raktor could respond, a new voice joined the communication channel. Overlord Raktor, this is Captain Sam Mitchell. We have completed our boarding operation and secured the collective vessels. Would you like us to bring one of their ships back for your science teams to examine? Boarding operation. The humans had not only defeated the invasion force, they had captured their ships intact. Captain Mitchell, Raktor said carefully, how did you disable vessels using technology we cannot even detect? Standard infiltration protocols, Sam replied cheerfully. We used phase shift technology to board their ships undetected, then convinced their crews that continued aggression would be inadvisable. The collective responds well to demonstrations of superior capability. Phase shift technology. The humans could move their personnel through solid matter to board enemy vessels, without triggering any defensive systems. Sir, Raktor's science officer called from his station. We are detecting massive energy signatures throughout this star system. It appears the humans have installations on every planet and major asteroid, every planet. Raktor turned to his tactical display, which now showed dozens of previously undetected structures throughout the system. Bases, monitoring stations, and defensive platforms that had been invisible to Imperial sensors were suddenly revealing themselves. Admiral Taylor, he said slowly, how long have you maintained a presence in this region? About 80 years, Beth replied. We established monitoring stations here when we first detected collective probing operations. This system serves as one of our early warning networks for extragalactic threats. 80 years. The humans had been operating a military base in what the Empire considered its core territory for 8 decades. Dr. Mike Davis here, a new voice announced. I am the chief scientist for this installation. Would you like me to explain some of our defensive capabilities? I think it might help with the ongoing diplomatic discussions. Please proceed, Dr. Davis, Raktor said, dreading what he was about to learn. Well, this system is protected by a standard early warning network. We have reality anchors to prevent dimensional intrusions, temporal stabilizers to detect time-based attacks, and quantum sensors that can detect hostile forces up to 50 light-years away. Basic defensive measures for a frontier installation. Basic defensive measures. Technology that sounded like pure fantasy to Imperial scientists, dismissed as routine equipment by human engineers. The interesting part, Mike continued enthusiastically, is our new planetary defense grid. We have been testing gravitational field manipulators that can redirect asteroid impacts or deflect hostile starships. Last month, we successfully moved a small moon to test the system's range capabilities. They had moved a moon for testing purposes. Dr. Davis, Raktor's science officer, interjected, such technology should require the energy output of multiple stars. Oh, we tap into the local star's output directly, Mike explained. It is much more efficient than trying to generate that much power artificially. We have learned to be very careful about energy management after the incident at Wolf 359. What happened at Wolf 359? Raktor asked, though he suspected he did not want to know. We accidentally destabilized the star during a weapons test. The resulting nova destroyed the entire system. That was when we decided that maybe we should be more conservative with our experimental procedures. They had caused a star to go nova by accident. During a test, Admiral Taylor, Raktor said, his voice barely steady. What you are describing suggests capabilities far beyond anything we have encountered. How large is the human military? Well, Beth said thoughtfully, Terra Defense Fleet has about 300,000 active vessels across all divisions, but most of our ships are stationed in other galaxies where the threats are more serious. This region only requires about 30,000 ships for adequate protection. 300,000 ships, spread across multiple galaxies. The human military was larger than some imperial estimates of total galactic stellar populations. Other galaxies? Raktor repeated weakly. Oh yes, we have been expanding into neighboring galaxies for about 2,000 years now. The Magellanic Clouds, Andromeda, the Triangulum Galaxy. We have found that early establishment of defensive positions prevents larger conflicts later. 2,000 years of intergalactic expansion. While the Empire had been struggling to control a few dozen star systems, humanity had been colonizing other galaxies. Admiral, Raktor said, if your civilization possesses such vast capabilities, why have you allowed the Empire to exist independently? Standard policy, Beth replied. We prefer to let civilizations develop naturally as long as they do not pose a threat to galactic stability. The Empire has been relatively peaceful compared to some species we have encountered. You have never attempted genocide or stellar destruction, so we saw no need to intervene. Relatively peaceful. The Empire's conquest of 47 star systems and subjugation of 23 species was considered peaceful behavior by human standards. However, Beth continued, recent events suggest it might be time to establish more formal relations. The extragalactic threats are increasing, and your territory is becoming strategically important for our defensive networks. What does that mean for Imperial independence? Raktor asked. Well, we are hoping to work out some kind of mutual defense agreement. You would maintain internal autonomy while accepting Terran protection from external threats. In exchange, we would establish permanent bases in your territory and provide defensive technology upgrades. Permanent bases. Defensive technology upgrades. The polite language could not hide the fact that the Empire was being offered a choice between voluntary cooperation and inevitable conquest. Captain Mitchell here, Sam's voice returned. Overlord, I have finished interrogating the collective prisoners. They have provided some interesting intelligence about future invasion plans. What did you learn? Raktor asked. The collective is planning a major offensive in about 6 months. They intend to establish permanent colonies in this galaxy and strip mine entire star systems for resources. The force they are preparing includes approximately 10,000 ships. 10,000 ships from another galaxy, preparing to invade and strip mine the known galaxy for resources. How does that compare to Imperial defensive capabilities? Raktor asked, though he already knew the answer. President Julia Anderson stepped through the dimensional portal onto the bridge of the Dominion's edge, her arrival accompanied by a shimmer of displaced air that made the assembled Imperial officers step back in surprise. The leader of the human colonial administration appeared unremarkable at first glance, a middle-aged woman in simple diplomatic robes. But the casual way she had traveled through folded space spoke to technologies that made the Empire's greatest achievements look primitive. Supreme Chancellor Velthar, War Marshal Kolveth, Admiral Zektar. Julia greeted each official with a slight bow. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know the recent revelations have been difficult to process. Difficult was an understatement. In the past week, the Imperial leadership had learned that their civilization was essentially a protected zone maintained by a species that treated intergalactic warfare as routine maintenance. The psychological impact on beings who had considered themselves the pinnacle of galactic power was devastating. President Anderson, Velthar replied, his crystalline voice carefully controlled. "We have reviewed the proposals transmitted by your diplomatic corps. The terms are comprehensive." Julia smiled with what appeared to be genuine warmth. "I prefer to think of them as protective guidelines rather than terms. We have learned from experience that formal agreements help prevent misunderstandings during crisis situations. The human accords, as they had been titled, were indeed comprehensive. In exchange for protection from extragalactic threats, the Empire would accept human oversight of military development, permit the establishment of Terran defensive installations throughout Imperial space, and agree to participate in joint training exercises with human forces. The document mentions preparation for threats from outside reality," Admiral Taylor said, his forearms gesturing toward the datapad containing the accords. "Could you clarify what that means?" "Certainly," Julia replied, settling into a chair that had been provided for the meeting. "Over the past million years, humanity has encountered various forms of hostile entities that exist outside normal space-time. Dimensional parasites, reality viruses, beings from parallel universes where the laws of physics operate differently. The standard threats from other galaxies are actually the easy problems. Million years. Outside reality. Reality viruses." Each phrase Julia used casually represented concepts that challenged the fundamental understanding of existence itself. "A million years?" War Marshal Kolveth asked, his scarred reptilian features showing disbelief. "Well, modern humanity has only existed for about 50,000 years, Julia explained, but we are the descendants of several previous human civilizations that were destroyed by cosmic-level threats. Each time, survivors escape to rebuild elsewhere. We have learned to take a very long-term view of galactic security. Previous human civilizations destroyed and rebuilt multiple times across cosmic history. The Empire was dealing with a species that had literally evolved through repeated apocalypses. "How many times has humanity been destroyed?" Velthar asked quietly. "This is our 7th iteration," Julia said matter-of-factly. "The previous 6 were wiped out by everything from entropic cascade failures to invasion by beings from higher dimensional space. We have gotten much better at survival planning over time." Commander Lisa Brooks materialized on the bridge beside Julia, using the same dimensional travel technology. "President Anderson, we have completed the preliminary survey of Imperial space. Captain Garcia's team has identified optimal locations for the defensive installations." "Excellent. How long for full implementation?" "About 6 months for basic coverage," Lisa replied, consulting a device that projected holographic displays into the air. "We can have quantum barrier networks operational within 3 months, reality anchors within 4, and dimensional monitoring stations within 6. The AI defense coordination system will need an additional month for full integration. 6 months to completely transform Imperial space with defensive technologies that the Empire could not have developed in 1,000 years. Julia was discussing the reconstruction of galactic civilization as if it were a routine infrastructure project. "Commander Brooks," Velthar said, "you mentioned AI defense coordination. Are you planning to replace our military command structure?" "Oh no," Lisa said quickly. "The AI systems are designed to assist your existing command staff, not replace them. We have found that organic beings make much better strategic decisions than artificial intelligence. The AI just handles the technical aspects of operating. Our defensive systems just handles the technical aspects." The casual dismissal of technology that could revolutionize Imperial society spoke to the vast gap between human and Imperial capabilities. "President Anderson," Admiral Taylor said, "what role would Imperial forces play in this new defensive arrangement?" "A very important role," Julia replied seriously. "We need local forces who understand regional politics and cultural dynamics. Human military doctrine focuses on large-scale threats, but local security requires beings who know the specific needs of individual systems and species." Captain Tony Garcia stepped through another dimensional portal, carrying what appeared to be a small briefcase. "Ma'am, I have the technological demonstration packages ready for the Imperial officers." "Wonderful. Gentlemen, We thought it would be helpful for you to see some of the equipment we will be providing to your forces. Julia gestured toward Tony, who opened the briefcase to reveal devices that seemed to bend light around themselves. These are standard personal defense units, Tony explained, lifting out what looked like a simple metal band. Quantum shields, reality anchors, dimensional communication systems, and basic medical support. Each unit can protect the wearer from most forms of attack, including temporal manipulation and dimensional displacement. Personal defense units with capabilities that exceeded Imperial ship-mounted systems. Tony was offering individual soldiers protection that surpassed anything in the Imperial arsenal. The really interesting development, Julia continued, is our new cooperative training program. We have found that mixed human-alien crews perform exceptionally well in combat situations. Different species bring unique perspectives that improve tactical effectiveness. You want our soldiers to serve alongside human forces? Kolveth asked. We want to offer your soldiers the opportunity to serve as equals in the Galactic Defense Network. Julia corrected gently. Some of your most experienced officers have already expressed interest in advanced training programs. As if summoned by her words, Admiral Zektar received a communication from his tactical officer. Sir, we have 17 requests from senior staff asking about transfer opportunities to human defensive commands. 17 senior officers abandoning Imperial service to join the force that had made their careers obsolete in a matter of days. President Anderson, Velthar said, what happens to Imperial sovereignty under these arrangements? You maintain complete internal autonomy, Julia assured him. We have no interest in governing your domestic affairs or interfering with your cultural development. Our only concern is external defense and preventing the kinds of cosmic disasters that destroyed previous galactic civilizations. Previous galactic civilizations. The casual reference suggested that entire galaxies had been destroyed by the threats humanity now routinely defended against. Ma'am, Lisa interrupted, we are receiving priority communications from Sector Command. The collective invasion fleet has accelerated their timeline. They will arrive in 4 months instead of 6. 4 months. The extragalactic invasion that would have destroyed Imperial civilization was arriving ahead of schedule. Can we expedite the defensive installations? Julia asked. Already underway, Tony replied. We can have basic protection operational within 6 weeks if we deploy the emergency protocols. 6 weeks to install defenses capable of stopping an invasion fleet that could annihilate the Empire. Julia was treating the acceleration of galactic warfare as a minor scheduling adjustment. Supreme Chancellor, Julia said, turning back to Velthar, I am afraid recent developments require us to begin implementation immediately. Do we have Imperial consent to proceed with emergency defensive protocols? Velthar looked around the bridge at his officers, seeing resignation and relief in their faces. The choice had never really existed. Accept human protection or face extinction. From threats they could not even comprehend. The Galactic Empire accepts the human accords, he said formally. We request immediate implementation of all defensive measures. Excellent, Julia smiled. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Network. Lisa, begin Phase 1 deployment. Tony, start recruiting Imperial volunteers for advanced training. I want our new allies ready for anything the collective might bring. As human officers began coordinating the transformation of Imperial space, Velthar realized that the age of isolation was ending. Humanity had revealed themselves not as conquerors, but as guardians who had been protecting the galaxy from threats beyond imagination. For the first time in centuries, the Supreme Chancellor felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The universe was far more dangerous than anyone had realized, but it was also far more protected.